President Emmanuel Macron, who enjoyed good relations with Kremlin leader Vladimir Putin before the war in Ukraine, has argued for a resumption of dialogue, lest Europe be cut out of ongoing U.S.-Russian peace negotiations over Ukraine that impact Europe's future. French re-engagement began earlier this month when Macron dispatched a senior advisor to Moscow. When asked by journalists what he'd learned from his envoy's visit, Macron responded, confirmation that Russia doesn't want
pennies. Spending on cars, furniture, and electronics fell, while spending on groceries and gasoline was slightly higher. Stock in Coca-Cola lost a little fizz after the company projected slower sales growth than forecasters were expecting this year. Coke raised prices in North America by 4% in its most recent quarter. For those who are thirsty for savings, the company began offering smaller cans. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
Wall Street is trading in mixed territory at this hour. The Dow is up 230 points. That's up about 0.4%. The Nasdaq is down 24 points. The S&P 500 is up 1. You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Jarl and Pamela Mohn, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts. And the Public Welfare Foundation, committed to advancing transformative youth and criminal justice reforms.
You're listening to WUSF 89.7. I'm Craig Kopp. Florida strawberry growers are asking trade officials to look into accusations that Mexican produce is being imported below normal value. Their petition claims imports are undermining domestic sales and causing prices to fall. The International Trade Commission opened an investigation and is expected to announce preliminary findings within the next couple of weeks. Daniel Pickard is a lawyer for the growers. He says the trend could be dangerous for American farm workers.
Mexico imports are increasing. They're taking market share. They're underselling the U.S.-produced product. As a result, farmers are making less and less money.
Warm temperatures make Florida an optimal place to grow strawberries during the winter. According to the Florida Strawberry Growers Association, the state produces about 15% of the country's strawberries this time of year. People who live near Philippi Creek in Sarasota are worried about another hurricane season without enough dredging being done. The county has started dredging certain high spots where sediment built up in the lower part of the creek. But the stormwater director has said it is more cost-effective to wait until December to do the middle section. Christy Molyneux lives in that area, and her home flooded 3 times in 2024 storms.
What I'm asking them to do is they have a permit now that they could do that trench down the middle of the creek, and that at least gives us some relief before hurricane season.
She and others along Philippi Creek plan to ask county commissioners today to intervene. The Florida House wants elementary school students to learn how to write in cursive. They unanimously approved a bill last week requiring cursive instruction in 2nd through 5th grades. Students would also have to demonstrate proficiency in cursive by the end of the 5th grade. Critics are saying that cursive writing is already taught at public schools, and this proposal would just add to over-testing of students. I'm Craig Kopp, WUSF 89.7 News.
The Winter Olympics in Milan have begun, and our partners at NPR are there. Keep listening to WUSF to hear great stories and to keep track of the medal count. Plus, you can get that content online, too, at WUSF.org and on the WUSF app.
Sarasota Concert Association presents the Philadelphia Orchestra, led by music director Yannick Nézet-Séguin. The program includes Brahms Symphonies No. 3 and 4, February 16th at the Van Wezel. Tickets at scasarasota.org.
This is Florida Matters Live and Local. We're sponsored by Badawi Law, and we're broadcasting from the Doctors Lorraine Rubis and Neil Frankel studio at WSF in Tampa. I'm Matthew Petty. Now, if you've enjoyed watching the Tampa Bay Rays play under Tropicana Field's distinctive domed roof, you've still got a few years left. The team's lease runs through the 2028 season. The team plans to leave, likely to Tampa, and developers are vying to build on the patch of prime downtown St. Pete real estate that once was home to one of the city's oldest African-American neighborhoods. 8 proposals are on the table, And to tell us more about those plans, here's Ashley Kreitzer, editor-at-large with the Tampa Bay Business Journal. Ashley, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
And Colleen Wright, who covers St. Pete for the Tampa Bay Times. Colleen, thank you as well.
Thanks for having me.
And your voice is important too. What do you want to see built on the site? If you live in St. Pete, are you wondering what, say, city residents will have in that redevelopment process? You can give us a call. Join the conversation. The number is 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. You can also email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. So there are 8 proposals. I want to ask both of you what stands out about the proposals. So, Colleen, you go first.
Sure. So the 8 proposals, that's total now because there were 9, considering there was an unsolicited proposal that started all, and 1 actually dropped out. But what's interesting to me about it is that there's really only 2 proposals that really look at the redevelopment or want to develop the entire site. The original Ark Ellis and Horsch proposal, and then one by Blake Investment Partners. There's another proposal from Will Conroy at Backstreet's Capital, and then some actually former development team members of the Tampa Bay Rays and Hines when they were going and trying to build a baseball stadium there and surrounding development, that they kind of want to just master plan the district and kind of build all the infrastructure out, like roads and sewers, and then make like development-ready parcels.
Oh, so let it come up organically, so to speak.
Sort of, yeah. It's like a different approach. But the rest of the proposals are all like smaller, only bits and pieces, or have like kind of a different approach, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah. What about you, Ashley? What stands out for you about those proposals?
What I think is so interesting from a development perspective is that everyone who has responded is pretty much a local group, and we've seen big national players join forces with those groups, such as the unsolicited bid that was submitted by Ellison Development, which is out of Tampa, and Kathy Wood's organization. You saw Kettler, a big national developer that's working on gas works in Tampa, join their bid. You saw a related group out of Miami, which has a huge presence in Tampa, built some apartments that sold for a record-breaking price at the time in St. Petersburg. They joined another local developer's bid. And I think that speaks to how insular St. Petersburg can be and how folks in St. Petersburg want you to be one of them. They don't always look kindly to outsiders because the culture of St. Pete is so valued, sort of that keep Austin weird, keep St. Petersburg unique. So I think it's interesting because this is one of the most premier sites in the Southeast, and to have these big national players say, we need a local in, is very interesting.
And I mean, speaking of, carving the land up into smaller parcels, I wonder, Ashley, I mean, what sort of are the criteria? Like, what is a winning bid going to hinge on? Is there anything out of bounds? Like, is there anything you couldn't build there?
Well, I think that's a question for Mayor Ken Welch's administration. I think what developers want more than anything is certainty. And if you start parceling it up, then we get back to the question of certainty. What am I going to build on my parcel if I don't fully know what's going to be my neighbor? And that's why I think that's one of the reasons we've seen St. Pete City Council raise this question of master planning the site before selecting a developer, which is a different approach. I think right now some of these developers are coming forth with their own master plan. But at 86 acres in an urban neighborhood, I think master planning is a must. I don't think it's optional, whether it's the developer that does it or the city itself leads that process.
If you're just joining us on Florida Matters Live and Local, we're talking about proposals to redevelop the land where Tropicana Field now stands in St. Pete. It's a few years off yet, but we're joined by Ashley Kreitzer with the Tampa Bay Business Journal, along with Colleen Wright with the Tampa Bay Times. You can weigh in too by calling 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562, or emailing FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. What do you want to see on that 86-acre plot of land that will eventually no longer have the trop on it? Now, the City Council is pumping the brakes a bit on these proposals, as Ashley mentioned. They want to study on what to do with the land first. Let's hear from Council Member Gina Driscoll.
We haven't even had discussions as a group with the administration about what we are looking for, let alone what an independent study could show us.
But Mayor Ken Welch said he wants to press on with the negotiations to fill a long-ago promise of economic inclusion for black residents of the gas plant neighborhood. He's not alone. Here's Council Member Deborah Fig Sanders.
That's gentrification by block to me. But again, I say stop playing with my people. Stop playing with the history that that gas plant means to the city of St. Petersburg.
All right, so Colleen, what's going on here? It's a little bit of internal dynamics in the city council there.
Oh, yes. This is a whole other chapter here. So City Council member Brandy Gabbard, who has said she's going to run for mayor. Let's remember this is an election year. Mayor Ken Welch is seeking re-election. Brandy Gabbard had an item on the agenda last week, on the City Council agenda, that said, let's kind of pause this process and express opposition, specific in quotes, to selecting a developer prior to any master planning process. And, some community activists, most of whom were against the former Ray's-Hines deal, are kind of behind this. They think that the city should kind of hire planners and do a master planning process. One thing I want to point out is, the mayor says, he kind of verbally said, it's not in writing, that developers should just look to the 2022 request for proposals that the Rays and Hines won and just follow 23 guiding principles there. Mm-hmm. But that's not in writing. Ashley talked about certainty, and developers want certainty. And I think having that in writing is or the absence of not having that in writing, I think, might have been at play here. And so the city just kind of wants to pump the brakes. There's a question of best practices and what should be followed. And this vote that took place last week, it was non-binding, this non-binding kind of resolution expressing opposition. But it signals a bigger thing, that the vote passed 6-2. There's 8 city council members. You need 5 on your side to get anything passed. So, some council members said how I vote on this today doesn't really mean it is not a reflection of how they might vote when, should Mayor Ken Welch bring kind of a negotiated development proposal to the council, because they have the ultimate say. But it's not really starting, if you're the mayor, it's not really starting from a great place, because you've got to get 5 people at least on your side, right? You've got to maybe win 3 over. So it does kind of show that, the mayor did put out some, at first, before the vote, the mayor was saying, we're still going to go forward. We're going to continue forward. He wrote a memo to city council pretty much saying that. And then after, he said, okay, we can look at some planning processes as well. But it just doesn't bode well for a future vote on any development plan if there isn't some kind of like master plan or effort at planning perhaps in the process.
We're talking about plans to develop the site of what is now Tropicana Field. You can weigh into what do you want to see go up there. 813-755-6562 is the number. Or you can email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Actually, one thing I found interesting is baseball may not be part of this. I didn't see baseball stadiums in any of the proposals. Or maybe I wasn't reading the fine print, but there is potentially some future sports there. I mean, what about the Tampa Bay Boom and others who say we could actually have some kind of sports arena on the site?
One of the ideas that I find most compelling is just, and it's pie in the sky right now, but the idea of bringing a WNBA team to St. Petersburg. St. Petersburg certainly seems like it would be a great market for the WNBA. And I think sports have their place in development. Certainly, we've seen how Water Street Tampa is not an arena anchored district in downtown Tampa, but the arena does provide foot traffic to Water Street Tampa. They definitely play off of each other in terms of driving demand for the restaurants and retailers in that district. So sports absolutely have their place. I think it's very interesting, the point that Colleen raised about the mayor saying just reference the 2022-2023 RFP. That was almost a different universe. If you'll recall, the mayor at that point was only willing to entertain proposals that did include the Tampa Bay Rays, and then they were caught empty-handed when the Rays walked away from that deal last year. So if you're a developer looking at this and you're looking at the city council vote next week, there has to be a little bit of anxiety about what's to come.
Yeah, I mean, it's been so long, right, Colleen? The city's been trying to figure this out for a long time. You described the site as the city's most talked about 86 acres. It's been sort of a years-long process to see what comes next. Does it feel like real progress, or are we just sort of back in the mess again?
I think it's hard to say. I mean, I think, this is an election year. We've got political things happening. We were just talking about this before in the room that, Mayor Kreisman tried to, I think this is the 3rd time now in 6 years that there's been an effort to redevelop the gas plant. And Mayor Kreisman, who's the mayor who preceded Mayor Welch, picked a developer for the site, Midtown Development, who was kind of looking to do with or without Rays Stadium. But Mayor Kreisman made that selection, I think it was 34 days before leaving office. And Mayor Welch said, yeah, we're going to just start over and not honor that. Now, this is a little different, right? This is January, February. But there is an election coming up, but you've got the primary election now in August. Then you likely have a runoff in November. You might get to a point where the city council, again, they kind of have the final say. Might be say, hey, it's election time, or, you never know. And then whoever gets picked likely will probably want some city subsidy, and they'll have to go through the community benefits advisory process, which is kind of like a citizen panel that's put together for projects that that want significant city subsidy, to kind of vet them to see, like, are they providing enough? It could be anything: affordable housing, workforce training, jobs, etc. And that process is kind of being retooled now. We saw this with Ray's Hines. It's just there's a long way to go. And Ashley brought this up that if you're a developer, you're looking at this that maybe something does see the light of day. I'm not here to predict anything or whatever, but it's possible that it could not.
Yeah. So a lot of potential in this 86 acres, lots to write and report about to come. We'll have to speak to you both, Colleen Wright with the Tampa Bay Times and Ashley Kreitzer, Editor-at-Large with the Tampa Bay Business Journal. Thank you so much for your insights, and we'll continue this discussion. Coming up after the break, you'll meet a documentary filmmaker whose film shines a spotlight on the history of the gas plant and the people who called it home before Tropicana Field uprooted the neighborhood. That's when Florida Matters Live and Local continues. But in the meantime, Colleen and Ashley, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm Emma Brisk, a WUSF Zimmerman Radio News intern. Working alongside this incredible team of passionate journalists has been an inspiring experience. No intern expects to interview the Tampa mayor on their very first day in the field, but I did, and that's exactly what makes this opportunity so unique. I'm deeply grateful for my time in the WUSF newsroom, which solidified my love for broadcasting.
Maurice Selby Gardens presents the Jean and Alfred Goldstein exhibition series Alexander Calder, The Nature of Movement. Explore Calder's interests in science and nature and the circus. Runs now through May 31st. Details at selby.org.
Still holding on to a car you don't drive anymore? Give it new purpose this season. Donate your car, truck, or boat to WUSF and help keep trustworthy local journalism strong. It's easy, and it may mean a tax deduction. Call 866-WUSF-CAR or visit WUSF.org.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty. Well, it's hard to have a conversation about what a place can be without talking about what it was. When it comes to the gas plant district, way before the latest slate of proposals to redevelop it, there was the thriving black community and the generations of people who called it home.
But when you look at this, you say, my God, what happened to the people?
Exactly. Where did they all go?
Where did they go, man?
Yes.
This was a whole damn neighborhood, community.
All of it.
Yeah.
Well, that's from a documentary called Raised, which tells the story of the 800 people who lived in the gas plant neighborhood and were displaced to make way for Tropicana Field. Raised, by the way, R-A-Z-E-D. It has two screenings, the documentary, two screenings coming up at Eckerd College this week. And for more, we're joined by the movie's director, Andrew Lee. Andrew, thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having us.
And also with us is Carlos Lovett, a former resident of the gas plant neighborhood. Carlos, thank you as well.
Good to be here.
And for listeners, if you have memories of the historic gas plant community or maybe just thoughts about where this whole development goes next, maybe you remember the discussions happening to put the Trop where it sits today, you can join the conversation by calling 813-755-6562 or emailing FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. All right, so Andrew, just tell us a little bit about the history. Where did the gas plant neighborhood get its name from?
The gas plant neighborhood got its name, I believe, in the I think it was a gradual process, right? Mm-hmm. But it goes back to 1914, I believe, when the city decided to have that area as the location for the city's natural gas plant.
Sure.
And that decision to put the gas plant where it was is kind of the first decision that you will see as a pattern of what was asked of that particular community to sacrifice for the city's progress.
That's interesting. So the gas plant was kind of like plopped in this community that was there already, and then the Trop sort of supersedes that, but that's, again, the same sort of pattern. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Carlos, what did St. Petersburg lose when, the Trop came along and a lot of those houses and neighborhoods were razed?
What did St. Pete lose?
Yeah.
I could tell you what the community lost. You know, we lost connection. We lost family. We lost a lot.
Yeah.
You know, I lost a lot. You know, even direction, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that community was everything to me. It was safety, you know, because we couldn't go, you know, further into the city, you know, without being harassed, you know. And so when we saw those gas plants, you know, that meant that I was home.
Yeah.
You know, I was home with
So
my
it's like
family.
kind of a beacon on the horizon.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so what do you remember about the kind of discussions that went around, okay, there's a baseball stadium coming in here?
Oh, wow. See, I was young. You know, I'm the one, I am the youngest in the film.
Exactly.
And so for me, when I knew things was changing is when I realized that I had to go to another school. You know, not a neighborhood school.
That's kind of traumatic as a kid, isn't it?
Oh, God. Yes, that was. It changed the trajectory of my life. Honestly, it did. Because we was treated so unfairly in white schools. I'm going to just say it, in white schools. And that still affects me today.
Yeah.
You know, that experience being in an elementary where we were literally abused. Abused.
Do you live in St. Petersburg now?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
So you have kind of mixed emotions about the city, I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do. I don't, you know, I love this city. I love my city. And I loved, like I said, I loved the neighborhood, you know, because we had mango trees. We had, it was like oasis was just put all over, you know, because it started to thrive. It became a thriving neighborhood, self-sustaining neighborhood. We had everything we needed there, you know, and so to lose it was to lose everything that I know.
Yeah.
You know?
If you're just joining us on Florida Matters Live and Local, we're talking about the documentary Raised. It speaks to former residents of the gas plant neighborhood leveled so a baseball stadium and massive parking lot could be built in its footprint. Andrew Lee is with us. He's the director of the documentary. Also with us is Carlos Lovett, a former resident of the gas plant neighborhood. Carlos appears in the documentary too. You can join the conversation too. Maybe you have some thoughts about what happened on that gas plant neighborhood, or what happened to the neighborhood, I should say, before the trop came in. 813-755-6562 is the number. You can also email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Andrew, so who else did you talk to in the course of making this documentary? And when you think about those conversations, what do you think kind of carries forward into what comes next, whatever it may be on the site?
We ended up speaking with about 20 former residents of the gas plant neighborhood, and as Carlos mentioned, he was the youngest of the 20. And unfortunately, during the making of the film, 2 of those residents passed away, which kind of just highlighted the importance of capturing these stories while the folks who lived it firsthand are still with us. You know, one thing that we walked away with that was surprising during the making of the film was hearing just the overwhelming stories of joy from that neighborhood. When you ask a former resident about what it was like growing up in that neighborhood, their eyes light up. You know, they just go on and on about the people who supported them, the mentors they had, the rich education they received within the neighborhood. And it was, you know, during a time when everything else around them was anything but safe and supportive. You know, this was a lot of times for the most people during Jim Crow, right, where they were, you know, not allowed to frequent stores and restaurants outside of the neighborhood. So they were forced to create this really tight-knit community. And that's something that, you know, as the filmmakers, hearing these stories for the first time just really moved us and stuck with us. And I think people that come to see the film will really enjoy hearing that part of the history, which then accentuates what happened next, even more so when the neighbors, the neighborhood, the residents were lied to in essence, by the city of St. Petersburg when they changed their mind and wanted to build a baseball stadium there.
Does this seem like a reset then? I mean, we don't have too much time left here, but Carlos, in the last 30 seconds or so, like, what do you want to see come next, and what are some of the things that the city should be watching out for, pitfalls?
Oh, wow. It feels like almost that this is just another, that's just not going to happen. You know, I just feel like what is next? You know, why is this not happening? Why we keep going over this and not having any result? You know, there's no result.
Yeah.
So, you know, I want to see it done in my lifetime, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does.
Yeah. And as Carlos and I were sitting in the waiting room hearing the previous segment about the current proposals, we kind of commented to each other that, you know, you can really hear the echoes of history, right, in the current day, you know, coming back from back then.
Yeah. Well, Carlos Lovett and Andrew Lee, we've been talking about the documentary Raised. You can catch that tomorrow, that's Wednesday night, and also Thursday at Eckerd College. Thank you both.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Well, coming up next, students throughout Tampa Bay have been walking out of class to protest ICE. We'll speak with an education reporter and a school board member. That's when Florida Matters Live and Local continues. Stay with us.
If you want to know more about what's happening around you in 2026, subscribe to WUSF's Wake Up Call newsletter. It's your morning dose of the latest news and things to do. You can subscribe at WUSF.org.
WUSF depends on contributions from people like you. And Badawi Law, offering legal services in personal injury, immigration, and auto accidents, with offices in Tampa, Florida. Office information and practice details at BadawiLaw.com, or learn more on Instagram at Badawi Law. Oslo Rep presents Agatha Christie's The Mirror Cracked. A Hollywood film star and her entourage descend upon a quaint English village to film an epic period drama. And then there's a murder. Shows run now through March 14th. Tickets at oslorep.org.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty. Well, student walkouts have been a way for young people to protest for quite some time. In recent weeks, students have been protesting ICE, its Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Students in Hillsborough and Pinellas County protested at St. Petersburg High School, Blake High School, Wharton High, and Hillsborough High. That's just to name a few.
Most good things came from protesting and strikes, and that's what I'm here to do. What we need to do is we need to get these students protesting. When they protest, they meet people from other organizations. When they meet people from organizations, they go to more protests, they read more books, they learn more about these things, and that's how you defeat the injustice in society. That's how you defeat the systems that only seek to disarm people or to divide people.
All right, so that was Nicole Cochran, a senior at Wharton High, who organised their protest. Now, in a letter to school superintendents, Florida's Education Commissioner Anastasios Koumoutsas warned school leaders and teachers they, quote, must not encourage, organise, promote or facilitate student participation in protest activity during the school day. And he went on to say that anything that kind of leans in that direction would warrant disciplinary action. Hillsborough County School Board member Jessica Vaughan said students have the right to protest. She told Fox 13, quote, we can't pretend that when our students walk in the door, this doesn't affect them. All things that happen in our community, in our country, that affect their lives, affect our students, whether they're in school or out of school, end quote. Now, if you're a parent or a student or a teacher, you can join the conversation. Share your thoughts on student walkouts by calling 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562, or emailing FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Well, Jessica Vaughan is with us now. Thank you so much for being here. We're not actually hearing that, but hopefully we can get that sound sorted out. We're also joined by Tampa Bay Times reporter Divya Kumar, who covers K-12 education. Divya, thank you as well.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you for having me.
Oh, there we go. Okay, we got your sound. That's fantastic. Thanks for being here. So let me start with you, Divya. You were at a protest at Wharton High. Let me just take a listen to some of that sound from that protest.
Loud, say it clear, immigrants are welcome here.
Say it loud, say it clear, immigrants are welcome here.
Say it loud, say it clear, immigrants.
All right, so kind of a sense of what was going on. What was the atmosphere like at that protest?
Sure. So at Wharton's protest, that was a protest that was after school and off of the campus property. That was organized by a group of students who, really felt it was important that they continue this and let people hear what they have to say. And that's kind of been what we've been hearing at other schools too, where students really want to be heard about this issue.
Yeah. Does the fact that it kind of happened off campus and after classes, that sort of changed the narrative around a little bit, do you think?
I think different students are organizing in different ways. And I think, people are finding, I think for that group of students, that's what made sense. A different group of students felt that protest being a form of resistance. I think they felt that going, during the school hours in light of consequences that they would face was also what they wanted to do. But I think different people are kind of doing it.
Yeah. What about school faculty? Like, were the staff kind of supervisors at all present at the protest that you were covering?
No, and I think that's talking to students as well. I think some of them expressed frustration that, they felt like, why aren't our teachers taking stands on this? And then others said, well, they can't. If they do, they'll get in trouble. So I think, hasn't really, that I've seen, there hasn't been any faculty involvement, sometimes to the frustration of the students who are doing this.
For sure. What about police? Police were there?
I think so. During the ones that were, during school hours, there were school resource officers, and especially when they were on campuses, there's school resource officers at the campuses kind of just supervising. And for the ones that were kind of on campus, like I know at St. Pete High last week, they protested during their lunch hour. There were administrators kind of present and just watching.
Yeah.
But, I think outside of school time and, off school property.
Yeah, it's a little different.
Yeah.
We're talking about student protests against ICE that have been happening in schools around the Tampa Bay region, elsewhere in Florida too. You can join the conversation. What are your thoughts about it? Where's the line between freedom of speech and people's right to an education, students' right to an education? Where does that line fall? You can call 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562, or email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Oh, Jessica Vaughan, let me bring you into this conversation. You've been posting about this on social media. What did you say, and what's the response been? Because it has garnered some attention, right?
It has, yeah. First of all, we've had protests since I've been on the board, before I've been on the board. Students have protested about a myriad of things. They've been protests in support of Turning Point USA. And when, Charlie Kirk was assassinated, there's been pro-Trump rallies and protests on campus. There's been Second Amendment rights protests on campus. And we've never seen at the state level, the Commissioner of Education take such a strong stance and actually threaten our administrators or our teachers around the protest. For me, what was glaringly a question that I needed to ask was, he made it a very big point that, consequences should be given if this is disrupting instructional time, which, I'm a huge proponent of instructional time. Anybody who watches the board meeting sees that I never stop advocating for certified teachers in front of our kids. But I had parents reach out to me who want their children to have these experiences, believe that it's their constitutional rights to protest as long as it's not disruptive, and ask about parental rights. That if they were to say, write a letter at the beginning of the year to say, I give permission for my student to miss an instructional time for this allotted time for any protest, would that be honored? Because we've seen, within the last few years, a huge shift towards, schools making policies and school boards making it, and this emphasis on the parental bill of rights. And so when I get posed those questions, I pose them back to the community. And so I made a post about it, just asking thoughts. And, that really angered our Commissioner of Education, who targeted me directly. And that's kind of where we're at now.
Yeah, and you can join the conversation too if you've got some thoughts about protest versus education, or maybe the two things aren't mutually exclusive. Join the conversation, 813-755-6562, or send us an email, FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. I just wanted to go back to a couple of weeks back, or maybe just over a week ago. Divya, there was a protest at Leonard High School in Ruskin. A couple of State House representatives, Republicans Danny Alvarez of Riverview and Michael Owen of Apollo Beach asked Commissioner Kamoutsas to investigate the principal. Can you just sort of tell us what was going on there and why they called for that?
Sure. So that was not a protest that I was present at. And I guess it sounds like that came to their attention when someone who, was not happy with that protest kind of reached out to them. And they believed that there were teachers and the principal was kind of supportive of the students there who were protesting. And, I think there's been kind of some questions whether there was actually like a fair process before all of that became, very on social media. And I think since then, both the representatives had said they're still in the fact-finding phase. They're still trying to understand what happened. And from what it sounds like from other schools as well, there have been meetings when school administrations have sort of heard advance notice of a protest happening where they are talking about safety and how to keep their campuses safe. And I think the two lawmakers since then have been saying that they, they support First Amendment rights.
So have they kind of walked back a little bit from what they were saying in that letter?
Well, they're saying they're not, they're not walking that back. They're saying they support First Amendment rights. But I think the things that they're emphasizing are they don't want instructional time or campus safety, interfered with. And the other thing that they're still saying is that they don't want viewpoint promotion on public school campuses.
What about what are the school leadership saying? Like, what's their response been to this?
I think what I've heard from the district, kind of as sort of an official stance, is that they support First Amendment rights, but students need to follow the code of conduct and state laws, and students will be sort of punished accordingly based on code of conduct. And so I think what that looks like, I don't fully know yet what consequences students might be facing. I think the things that they were told they could face include referrals, in-school suspension, alternative to out-of-school suspension. And I know there is sort of due process for all of that. And
yeah, but it's a little vague. That strikes me, Jessica, too, that, there's that letter from the education commissioner, but the actual kind of consequences is not exactly clear. He just says, disciplinary action, I think was the phrase used, or something along those lines. So what is your understanding of what could happen to teachers and staff if they're sort of seen as out of line when it comes to promoting a protest on, during school time?
Well, first of all, I'd like to back up. These two legislators made these very inflammatory accusations without contacting the district, without getting any details around what actually occurred. The only thing from my understanding, the principal advised was you can't physically stop students. You can't put your hands on students. That's not authorizing a protest. That's letting employees know you can't touch our students, and then moving them to a field where it was safe. I mean, as you saw in other states, there were people who actually physically got out of their cars and attacked students protesting. So safety was her number one priority. So to, without getting clarification, make a social media post that attacked one of our beloved educators who was prioritizing student safety is problematic. You also saw the next day a county commissioner who then posted and said that one of the ICE walkouts at Freedom High School led to a fight, and posted a video, which was not true. There was not a fight during the protest, and the video wasn't even at one of our schools. So you see kind of elected officials using this as an opportunity to, promote information without getting the facts. That's irresponsible. As far as educators are concerned, there's a whole process from professional development where the state would contact us, they would walk through the events, they would do an investigation, and it would go through professional standards, not professional development, professional standards. And then as far as, student discipline, it really depends on, if students leave campus, if they miss a period, if they're tardy, that's where it goes to our student code of conduct.
Are you hearing from parents, you said you'd heard from parents who say, look, we may want our kids to have this experience because it's sort of part of the broader spectrum of education. But are you also hearing from parents in the district saying we just don't want protests kind of interfering with our kids' time? Because, I think kids do have a limited amount of time to get through all of that classwork and homework
Sure.
and course material, right? It's quite challenging to get through all of that stuff.
It is, and yeah, sure, you hear from parents on both sides. I've heard more from parents who support protests, but that just might be who they're reaching out to. There have been a lot of people who aren't parents, who don't live in our community. Once the commissioner boosted my social media that had opinions, but then once we kind of dive into the conversations and we talk about instructional time versus politics, I made a post recently where we have sanctioned clubs that happen during the school day, and during those club days, students in the clubs are able to miss an entire period, instructional time, to go to these student-led clubs. And as you see with our Commissioner of Education and a lot of these same legislators or leaders who are saying keep politics out of our classrooms, they're pushing to make sure that we can have Turning Point as one of the state student-sponsored clubs, which is a very political organization. So once again, I have questions from parents about the hypocrisy of saying, okay, well, you can't prioritize instructional time for politics in our schools, but they see students being able to leave a class for an entire hour to go to a Turning Point club as the same thing. So, I think trying to get clarification about parental rights and what's considered ideology and what politics you're allowed to, leave instructional time for are things we should be allowed to have a discussion about and decide as policymakers, collaboratively without pointing fingers and trying to divide our community.
In the last few seconds we have here, Jessica, there's a school board meeting tonight, right? Is this going to be a topic of discussion, do you think?
It's not on the agenda, so I don't think so. We're very focused on academic achievement, and we use the time to talk about our budget. So I don't anticipate it will be, but you never know who's going to come to public comment.
Well, we're going to have to leave the conversation there, but Jessica Vaughan, Hillsborough County School Board member, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And also with us this hour, Tampa Bay Times education reporter Divya Kumar. Divya, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, coming up, we're going to hear about the Cross Florida Cycleway. If you're a bicycle enthusiast, maybe you've ridden part of that trail, stick around for that conversation. That's when Florida Matters Live and Local continues. Stay with us.
I'm Indira Lakshmanan. Feminist icon Gloria Steinem and Liberian Nobel Peace Prize winner Lema Bowie team up to empower girls around the world in their new picture book.
We absorb our idea of truth more from pictures than we do from words, since we only are able to read words a little bit later in life.
That's next time on Here and Now.
Join us this afternoon from 1 to 3 on WUSF 89.7.
WUSF is proud to present the documentary Defending the Everglades Again. How the Immigrant Detention Center, dubbed Alligator Alcatraz, awoke a decades-old conservation fight. This half-hour program explores how it's all connected, from the land's history to the people behind the current fight to shut down the detention center. You can watch now at WUSF.org/Everglades.
Dance, dine, and make a difference at Resilient Rhapsody. Enjoy live music at Big Night Out, Latin-inspired cuisine, and fun for all ages. All for a cause that heals. Sunday, March 8th at 4 p.m. Tickets at resilientretreat.org.
This is WUSF 89.7. Looking for something to do? Visit the community events calendar at WUSF.org.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty. Well, listen up, bike riders and bicycle enthusiasts. If you've ever wanted to bike across the state, your time may be here pretty soon. The state is finishing up 13 regional bike trails going from one part to the other. This includes the Florida Coast to Coast Trail. It stretches from Pinellas County here in Tampa Bay to Brevard County on the Space Coast. It's nearly finished with a few spots left to complete in Central Florida. And if you're an avid bike rider, I want to hear from you. If you're excited to hit the trail, maybe you've already ridden part of it, tell us about it. 813-755-6562 is the number. You can also leave us a comment on YouTube or send us an email, FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Well, Daniel Pascal traversed the trail. He's a manager at the Mid-Atlantic sector of the East Coast Greenway Alliance. Daniel is with us now. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, so you work with communities to get these trails built. There's a lot of work that goes into it. What do you actually have to do to get this off the ground, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, a trail is a complex thing politically and in terms of getting funding, even though it's, pretty simple once you see it in existence. You have to rally community members. Trails are very local at the heart of them, and so those residents, those enthusiasts and businesses and, folks that really see the value in it, we want to elevate the benefits of those trails to elected leaders, so they can prioritize these projects for funding so that we make sure that we're investing in them both for the development but also the maintenance and programming of those trails.
So it's a regional trail is one that sort of goes from one jurisdiction to another, right? So it's more complicated because you got to get buy-in from both ends of the trail, all the land that it travels through.
Exactly, yes. It involves a lot of coordination, a lot of sharing of information, and really kind of building a coalition of jurisdictions, elected leaders, planners, and then residents who want to see this come true.
Okay, so you've ridden part of this trail, right? Or have you ridden the entire thing, all the way from one side of Florida to the other?
Yes, yeah, I was really fortunate. My wife and I actually got to travel together with some friends of ours and a colleague of mine from St. Pete all the way across to the Space Coast. We did it over a course of about 4 days, and we camped out along the way. We did have some assistance to traverse one of the gaps that I know Florida's working on filling, but it was an incredible experience. Got to, you know, dine in some of the restaurants along the way, meet some of the local folks, see the wildlife, some of the birds and the alligators, and some of the forests and state parks. So it was a tremendous experience. I highly recommend it to anyone curious about it. It's a
Yeah.
great trip.
Now you're based in Philadelphia, right?
I am. I am actually. There's snow outside right now, so I am longing for yeah, back to those Florida temperatures right now. But we actually took the Amtrak train down overnight and hopped out in Tampa Bay and rode to Gulfport and St. Pete and started our adventure there. This was back in 2024.
Yeah. Okay, so sort of seeing Florida as a tourist, I imagine you get a different experience of it if you're on a bike rather than driving or, taking a train or however you're getting around. But a bike gives you a totally different sort of look at the place, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been, on my list of things to see, lots of different states and trails. And Florida, you come in with an impression as an outsider. I grew up around, Virginia and Washington, D.C. I was imagining, I know Disney World and highways and, some of the coast, but I had no idea about all the incredible trail towns that are along the way, and the amazing nature and wildlife, some of the forests and preserves that are out there, some of the camping. So it gives you a really intimate connection with some of these places, and you get to meet people, and they ask you about your travels, where you're headed. You might see some other travelers that are out there. It's just a really great way to, kind of get outside of the shell of, a rental car or another type of way to explore a place.
Yeah. If you're just joining us, we're talking with Daniel Pascal. He is the manager at the Mid-Atlantic sector of the East Coast Greenway Alliance, talking about the Cross Florida Cycleway. It's about 88% complete, I believe. A little bit of work still to go, but Daniel's ridden some of it. Maybe you've ridden some of these trails too. You can join the conversation by calling 813-755-6562. If this is on your bucket list, we'd love to hear from you as well. That number again, 813-755-6562. You can also send us an email, FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. So, I mean, what does your organization do, and how important is the Greenway Alliance to kind of making these things happen? Because it's, there's a lot of money, as you say, going into it, a lot of input from local communities, the trail towns, as you call them, but what do you do to sort of steer it through to completion?
Sure. Yeah. So the East Coast Greenway Alliance, the organization I work for, we're advocating and planning trails with the support of our champions on the ground. Really, we're teaming up at the ground level to complete all these trail sections to link them together from Maine all the way down to Florida. So that, and involves a lot of cities and towns. We're actually trying to help people get access to the trails by going to where population centers are, to make it easier to get outside, safe from traffic, be outside with your family, to walk, to bike, to join up with groups of friends, to explore, use it for transportation as well as recreation. So this, in Florida, we're working closely with some incredible trail champions, of course, at the state level. This is Department of Environmental Protection, Office of Greenways and Trails, as well as the Florida Department of Transportation. They have an incredible Sun Trail program that, in the Mid-Atlantic, I'm sharing these best practices to other, trail organizations and departments in different states in my region. And then locally, again, like you had said, working across jurisdictions, making sure that our friends at the planning department or tourism bureaus at different counties are working together. I mean, thinking about the coast to coast trail, you're connecting different parts of the state, but that's also part of this larger network. So you imagine this, almost like a mosaic of different communities all linked together by these trails,
Yeah.
and that helps with economic development, as well as recreation and transportation.
You talked about a trail town before, or trail towns. What is a trail town?
Yes, there's probably lots of technical definitions, and I know that Florida has an amazing program, but the basic concept is a town embracing the benefits of that a trail can bring. And so you can imagine if you're going in a vehicle, through a town, you're probably on an interstate, or a high-speed road, and you're not likely to stop unless you really need to, use the restroom or pick up something to eat. But that might be a quick stop. Whereas a trail invites people at, more kind of human speeds. You're walking, you're biking, and it really invites people to stay, to linger, to get something to eat. Actually, in Dunedin, when we were biking on the Coast to Coast Trail, we stopped into a farmer's market. It just happened that it was happening at the same time we were riding through, and so we hopped out, got to explore the town a little bit, picked up some souvenirs, and that was just, a momentary sort of on a whim decision.
Yeah.
But that's because as a trail town, they have maps and amenities and festivals and music that, really try to make this an experience to remember.
Yeah. If you were to do like the coast to coast trail or any bike trip where you're linking up a bunch of different places and you're stopping overnight, like how do you pack? Because I've seen some cyclists riding along and they've got a little trailer behind them, but it still seems then you've got to be very conscious of weight. I mean, you talked about picking up souvenirs. I'm assuming you're not going to be picking up anything too heavy, like nothing kind of carved or heavy crockery or anything like that, right? It's got to be fairly lightweight if you want to pack it with you. Unless you've got like a support vehicle going along for the ride as well.
Yeah, some people have that support vehicle. Some are self-supported, they call it. I think, there's different levels. When I started out, I didn't really have any gear, and you can certainly ride along with a backpack or, put a bag on the handlebars. But as you go, you might want to invest in, they call them panniers, or, saddlebags that you can put on a rack, that actually, locks up to the bike. And that way it's really easy you can remove them, use it as like a shoulder bag. And that way you can pick up groceries on your way. The nice thing about, trails like the coast to coast is that you can restock in different towns. So you don't have to pack like a bunch of days worth of food all in one go, but, do it as you're stopping in each town.
So, thinking about sort of what Florida has to do to connect everything up. Now, you mentioned when you rode this trail, there were a few places where you kind of got a ride. I'm thinking there's maybe a bit of an analogy to people who do canoe trips, right? Some places you can't actually canoe because it's too overgrown or there isn't enough water, so you got to get out and kind of schlep your canoe across. Is it similar with this? Like it's just the roads are too dangerous, or I mean, are there ways to connect these up yourself even without that trail?
Yeah, it really depends on kind of the context and where you are. There are some people, some brave souls that are willing to ride their bikes on, almost any type of road, where it's allowed. And those, that's great for them, but it's also not going to be for everybody. And
Mm-hmm.
so, for folks that maybe aren't going to be able to do the high stress roads, there are ways that you can sometimes, if you need to catch transit, buses a lot of times will have the bike racks in front. If
Sure.
it's maybe a short distance, you can, order a ride hail, an Uber or a Lyft if you get a larger vehicle, to put the bike in the back. I've done that before. If you can coordinate with friends to coordinate vehicles for those gaps. But what's really exciting is that these gaps are closing, and I know Florida's working on a number of projects on the Coast to Coast Trail this year and going forward. So hopefully over time, you won't have as many of those kind of complicated logistical issues. So
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to help people with the current what looks like what is out there today,
Yeah.
as well as help us help you, advocate for more trails so
Yeah.
that it's much easier over time.
We're going to have to leave the conversation there, but we've been speaking with Daniel Pascal. He's a manager at Mid-Atlantic Sector of East Coast Greenway Alliance, talking about the Cross Florida Trail. Daniel, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And good luck with the snow up there in Philadelphia. Well, next time on Florida Matters, live and local, 2 in 5 college students in the United States face food insecurity. We're going to talk about student hunger in the Tampa Bay region, what's been done to meet the need. You can call 813-755-6562 or email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Leave a message or a question or thoughts to share on student hunger and join the conversation. Tune in Wednesday at 12 noon. That's our show for today. Our executive producer is Grayson Doctor. Our producers are Amelie Horace and Quincy Walters. Our engineers are Jackson Harp and Geo Garvin. Jackson composed our theme music. Chandler Balcom handled the video today. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcast and watch on our YouTube channel. I'm Matthew Petty. Thanks for being with us.